So there are three parts to every single variable. The first part is the data type. The second part is its identifier. And the third part, of course, is its value. These three pieces of information serve to define what exactly a variable is. In this case, a very specific variable, or in any case, for that matter, inside the world of programming. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go through each of these parts and break them down. Let's start off with data type. Let's get rid of this first. So the data types really represent what kind of data a given variable can hold. Once you set up a variable to hold one specific type, that's pretty much what it should be used for from then on out. So what I want you to do is visualize your old playset when you were 2 years old. And you had all these different shapes you had to stick in this wooden box or whatever. And you had this square peg and you had a round hole. It didn't fit. No matter how hard you push that square peg is not going in that round hole. Well, our variables and our data types work the exact same way. Each bucket, so to speak, is a certain shape. And each data is also a certain shape. So when we define a given bucket to hold a specific data type, we're really saying this bucket holds a specific shape. And if we try and put something else that's a different shape into that bucket, it won't fit. It won't work. So that's a problem. So we have to make sure that we define our buckets, or we use our buckets in a specific way that says it is always going to hold this type of data. In JavaScript, there are three types of data. There is numbers, there is booleans, and there are strings. Let's go through this one at a time. Numbers are the most obvious. Obviously, these are numbers that could be whole numbers, they could be decimal numbers, they could be positive numbers, and they could be negative numbers. They're just numbers. They're typically used in things like calculations, of course, tracking scores, that kind of stuff. They're going to be one of the most used data types to use. So these are just numbers. The second thing is a data type called booleans. Boolean is a term used for a type of data that can only hold one of two values. It can either be a true or it can be a false. Now this doesn't seem very useful to you. In fact, it isn't very useful to you. However, in the near future, when we start to talk about how our programs can make decisions, well, they're making decisions based on true-false tests. Right? They're these Boolean expressions, and they're going to say, hey, is this true? If it is, run this code. If it's not true, run this different code. It allows our programs to make decisions. And finally, strings. Strings are something you've already been working with. You just don't realize it yet. String is just a fancy way of saying text. Where does the term come from? Well, I like to think that it comes from a very simple analogy. You guys have all seen these things before, where you go to a birthday party and you see this big sign that looks like this. And it's got this string that kind of attaches each letter together. Where did I go here? There we are. So a string works exactly like this big happy birthday string. You have one string that kind of connects all of the characters in a given piece of text together. Even the space right here. Each one of these is a character. And when we think about that, they're all strung together, and hence the term string. Another piece of information that's important about strings is that each letter actually has an address. Starting at 0, starting at the left, each letter is given a specific address. 3, 4, even the space. So looking at this, we can see that each address is numbered from 0 to 13, which means it has a total of 14 characters, or 14 elements. So if I were to say to you, well, what character exists at the third element? Well, you're going to count over from left. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's a P. That is different from me than saying that's different from me saying something like, what letter exists at the fourth address, or at address 4? Sorry, address 4. Well, that's this one right here. It's a Y. We have another more simplified term for this address. We call it an index. So it's easier for me to say what letter exists at index 4. And of course, that's the Y, as we just saw. So this is a string and what it represents. You've already been using these before with our output statements, even a little bit in expressions such as like concatenation and whatnot. Essentially what concatenation is just kind of attaching another string on top of this and adding more characters over here to the other side. Just stringing them all together. So those are our data types. And we'll continue on with this lesson in the next module.